Okay, guys, we are now doing question 5 of paper 1 2022 that was written as a final by the Matrix. So let's look at this question and what exactly it entails. So question 5 says that during the 2008 to 2012 period, South Africa recorded an average growth rate. So we already see here that there was a growth. And if something is growing and there's a growth in it, we are adding, okay? And it was just over 2%, largely due to the global economic recession. It doesn't really matter if you are stuck in terms of how big the words are, okay? So Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and the Western Cape collectively, this means all together, contributed a significant portion to the country's growth. So we are given a particular graph, and it says here the graph below shows the contribution of these three provinces towards the different sectors. So we're going to be given sectors in terms of what they mean here. So contributions of three provinces, and this is the title of the graph. And remember, I said to you, if we are not given the title, you need to give your own title and you get a mark for giving the title of a graph. So always just pay attention to that. We have our three keys over here. So we have a key for Gauteng, a key for Western Cape, and a key for KwaZulu-Natal. And we can see that it's represented by dotted lines, solid dotted lines, and a solid line. So we've got our x-axis and we've got our y-axis. We can see here we've got finance, transport, wholesale, and agriculture. These are all then represented in terms of the y-axis there, which is the dependent axis, between 0 and 28%. And we see that we have, I would call it a decreasing trend. I would call it inverse proportion. And there are times where it goes down and there are times where it goes up as well. So there's a side note there. It says a global economic recession leads to a drop in the country's economic. So recession means that there was a drop, okay? And that's the side note. And the reason why it's put there is because up here we were told about growth rates. So it means that there was actually a decrease in the growth rate because of the recession. Hence, this graph is a decreasing graph and it is inverse proportion. So just by that, we can see that as x increases, y decreases. That's the relationship of the graph. So it says here, use the above information to answer the questions that follow. Write down the province that contributed the most to the wholesaler sector. So let's go to the wholesaler sector and look at the graphs that we are given. I'm going to use a different color because it's going to give us more perspective. So we want the wholesale sector. And we can see that in terms of the wholesale sector, we've got this graph, which is at the bottom, followed by this graph, and then that is the graph that is at the very top of it. And we can see that in terms of our keys, it is the Western Cape. So our answer is Western Cape. So I can just say the Western Cape. The next question, okay, I wrote that with a small c, Western Cape. The total amount contributed by the three provinces to agriculture was 8.3 billion. Again, we need to know our numbers as I've stated in the previous questions. You need to know how many zeros a billion has. Okay, that's very important. So determine which part of this amount the Western Cape contributed. So we are talking about agriculture. Let us go and see what agriculture looks like. So this is agriculture. And in terms of agriculture, we have got this amount here in terms of percentages. And I would make that at 3%. and then we've got these two here, which are 4%. We need to add these together and make it a fraction so that we can calculate how much the Western Cape contributed. So if we add them together, it's going to be this 3% and then this 4 plus 4%. So it's going to be a fraction. Okay, so it's 3% plus 4% plus 4% is equal to, that's 8 plus 3. In total, it's 11%. However, with that 11% given, we can see that the Western Cape contributed 4% out of the whole 11. So the Western Cape contributed 4% out of the 11. So now we are trying to find 4 out of 11 of 8.3 billion. So you could either do it like that, or you could either write it out as a whole. So let's just see what it's going to give us. So as a fraction, 4 all over 11 multiplied by 8.3, and we get 3,0. Yes, I'm going to write that number exactly as it is. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 3. I'm going to write it there, comma 0, 1, 1, 8, 1, 8. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's what my number looks like. Okay, but I need to remember that this number is actually billion. So if I choose to not write it as a billion like that, let's not forget the rands, then I need to go and see how many zeros a billion has. So a billion has, if million has 6 zeros, then a billion has 9 zeros, meaning that my comma needs to move that many times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it means that I would just write out my number exactly as it is, which is 3018181818. If I don't want to write this billion at the end of it. So the billion needs to be there if I wrote it like that. Okay. Identify the sector in which KZN made 12% of the contribution. So we're going to go to KZN. Firstly, KZN is a solid line. So we are looking for a solid line and we want to see where KZN made the best in terms of that. So over here, KZN is below these two. So KZN is not the best there. Okay. And then over here, KZN is in the middle. And over here, KZN is equal to the Western Cape. So KZN made the best here, which is transport. So wherever the graph is at the top, that's where that particular sector is dominating. Or that's where that particular sector is moving quite well. Name the sector that has the largest range. Firstly, we know that range is equals to maximum minus minimum. And because range is equals to maximum minus minimum, we need to find the biggest space in between the minimum and the maximum. So let's just see if we can get rid of some stuff here. There we go. So what we can see is that this is the minimum here and that's the minimum there. This is the minimum here and that's the minimum there. And coming here as well, what we can see is that we've got a very small range over there, because if I were to say maximum minus minimum, I'd find a very small number. However, this is the minimum here, which looks like it's about 15%. Okay, so if this is the minimum and it's 15%, then we are speaking of that being the minimum And that's the maximum there, which looks like it's about 23%. So that's the maximum. So the biggest range is going to be in finance. So basically they're asking about the biggest space basically. So I can just say that the biggest range is going to be in finance. And if I want to write a reason, I can just say because the maximum is far from the minimum. It's the furthest. Okay. Name one province that made the most significant contribution towards the growth of all or most of the sectors, This means that we need to point out the graph that was at the highest point in most cases. So again, I'm just going to remove some of this because it's going to just confuse us there. So let's go and see at all the points. At this point, it was the Western Cape that was the highest. At this point, it was KZN that was the highest. At this point, it was Western Cape that was the highest, and at this point, they are equal. So Western Cape is still there. So Western Cape wins. So Western Cape made the most significant contribution. These are actually quite simple marks, if you ask me.